Hi there. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kathy. I'm an earth angel sent by God to share with you my story of how I survived the dark night of the soul from 2008 to 2018. It was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. However, I survived. And after being sacrificed, I became victorious through the power of God and the love of God, and getting my vibration all the way up in love with God, in love with myself. That was the key, in love with humanity, and always choosing love over everything and laying aside every weight that ensnared me. The last video was the first part, and that went from 2008 to 2014. And now I'm going from 2014 to 2018 in part 2. There will be a third part, the plot twist. What God revealed to me after having gotten all the way up, my vibration all the way up in love. So I ended on 2014. I had just lost the apartment that I was trying to hold on to without a job, and was unable to. So I think I left there in the 3rd or 4th month of the contract. So after having left there, I did have some credit cards, so I decided, of course, I had no other option. I had to stay in hotels. And so I began that journey. I used Price on Express. I think I mentioned that in the last video. And which was really good because it allowed me to get 3-4-star hotels at a reasonable rate. And that's what I did. During the day, I spent most of my time either at the Starbucks or the library or a hotel lobby. And this, ate up a lot of hours. I was always on survival mode. And when I say that, meaning I was always looking for a place to sleep, a hotel. And so I was fortunate most of the time. Only spent one night in the streets, and I don't know if I discussed that in the last episode, but I will go over it again here. I had a play date, I guess you could say, with one of my siblings, and I couldn't find a hotel yet because sometimes they'll pop up, Priceline, they'll pop up, a hotel will pop up within my price range, but it had not done so. The prior day, or the day that I had the play date with my sibling. And so I went to a hotel lobby close to where she lived so that I could walk over to her home, her apartment, when the time came. I called her as the time got closer. She did not respond. So I think we had a time of 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock. I went there, and I heard her entertaining. I didn't knock because I heard a gentleman inside, and so I left. Went back to the hotel, and I went back to her place, and again, she was still entertaining. This may have been 9 o'clock. I went back because it was a 5-minute walk, so it was no big deal. And I kept calling, no answer. And then I went back at 10 o'clock. No, I think it was 11 o'clock. I went back, and she had closed up her house, her home. She had gone to bed, basically. And I was very discouraged and surprised that she just ignored my calls and didn't do what we had planned to do, and just hang out and have a couple of drinks, and we always had a good time when we were together. So I went back to the hotel, and of course survival mode kicks in, fear kicked in. What am I going to do? I didn't have any friends. I'd never been able to really make friends. And that's been an ongoing thing since childhood. So I went to the hotel, and I sat in the lobby, and at midnight, a person from the hotel came over to me and said, if you're not a guest of the hotel, you're going to have to leave. And I said, oh, well, I'm just waiting for my sister to pick me up. And they said, well, you're going to have to wait outside because we lock our doors at midnight. And I said, well, I'm sure she'll be here. And I said, well, if you don't leave, we're going to call the police. So I gathered my things, and I went to, I stood in front of the hotel for a minute, and then I decided that I would go to the bus shelter across the street, directly across the street from the hotel. And I figured if something happened, I could run back to the hotel. So that's what I did. I stayed on the park bench. I mean, not park bench, the bus shelter bench. And I sat there. I pulled out my cell phone to watch Hulu. Seinfeld was a program I watched every night before I went to bed. I didn't have a bed, but I had Seinfeld. So I began watching Seinfeld, and I just sat there in shock because I've never stayed overnight on the streets. So this was, I was on high alert. I felt like an animal in the wild because, animals stay on high alert just in case something goes wrong. In the wee hours, a couple did pass by, and a couple cars were down the road, but for the most part, it was quiet. And the hotel does not allow smoking, so people will come out from their rooms in the wee hours to smoke. I was exhausted. I was scared. I couldn't sleep, of course. I sat there and tried to distract myself with watching Seinfeld on Hulu. I was anxiously waiting for daybreak because Starbucks was half a block away, and I knew I could go in there to use the bathroom and freshen up. And but the hours just went by so slowly, and I sat there, and then it was so amazing because doing all of this on this 10-year journey, which amazes me that so much time went by before I could get a hold of myself, and turn this thing around. But I didn't cry. I was not big on crying. I always felt that crying distracts you from finding a solution. And I was already defeated, so tears were not going to help. Do I find tears to be a great de-stressor? Yes, but for me, tears just I just found it to be it's not something that I do. It's just a distraction to me. I'm not saying I never cry. I just don't cry over spilt milk, so to speak. So I heard God say, and while I was sitting on that, in that shelter, clean slate, and I heard it, and I repeated it to myself. Excuse me. And that's when a tear did roll down my face. This is when that's the only time I cry, that I get emotional about thinking about what I went through. So I let me pause this.